Most businesses only focus on growing and expanding, and they give little to no attention to their exit strategies until after exit is staring them in the face. Learn here at Boosting Business Value, brought to you by Blue Sky Business Resources. You'll discover how to shape a more durable and saleable business, and how to implement a powerful, well-planned, and rewarding exit. Join Dr. David Gruder and Jason Tazinkowicz as they deliver actionable tips for lower middle market company owners, executives, and their trusted advisors. Find out where your business currently stands, how you can meet your revenue objectives more reliably, and how to grow your venture to the next level, all with a smooth and fruitful exit in mind. Here are your hosts, Dr. David and Jason.
Well, welcome to the latest episode, the next episode of Boosting Business Value. And in this episode, we're going to unpack what Kaizen is and its profound impacts on boosting your business's culture, profitability, and value. And we'll also show you how to shift Kaizen from an embraced value into effective implementation. For those of you who are new to this Boosting Business Value podcast, I'm Dr. David Gruder, the business lifecycle, exit planning, and post-acquisition psychologist for Blue Sky Business Resources. And with me is the ever-amazing co-host of this podcast, Jason Tazinkowicz, who is Blue Sky's Chief Operations Officer and all-around wizard behind the curtain. So let's kick this off with you starting to talk about what Kaizen is.
Yeah, and thank you for that beautiful introduction, Doctor. It's always a treat to hear you say nice things. But
they're true too.
I appreciate that. If we're going to talk about how to really embrace and implement Kaizen into the daily operational culture of a business, it's important first to understand what it is and why it matters. And I think a lot of people have heard this goofy Japanese word, but I don't know that many really embrace what it means. The word, it means virtuous change that prevents future repetitions of current challenges and proactively anticipates upcoming challenges to resolve them before they become problems. And it's actually built out of two Japanese words, kai, which means change, and zen, which means virtue. And the reason that that's important is because the idea is not just about continuous improvement. It's not just about progressive change. It's about every member of a team having a virtuous requirement to drive positive change, to think about what could be better about what we're doing right now, and how do I improve the lives of my community members within this organization by making an improvement. And I think that that's a really big clarification, that ownership piece, that commitment to the other members of the future team that gets lost in translation a lot of the time. And, for a little bit of history, Kaizen was first used in business after World War II, when U.S. business people went over to Japan to help rebuild. And there was this East meets West cultural situation where Japan has an ideal of perfection, and the U.S. had a few concepts of quality and process optimization, and that really all came together as what became known as the groundbreaking Toyota Way, which covered lean. It created Six Sigma. Kaizen was part of all of that Toyota Way, and that's when it gained its popularity. So, that's just a little bit of history of how Kaizen came to be a part of business operation. And Doctor, tell us a little bit more about how it's utilized nowadays.
Right. Well, thanks. And one of the things that stands out to me about Kaizen is that it's a buzzword that's thrown around a fair amount. And When I hear a buzzword, all I hear is a good intention. So when people talk about Kaizen as a buzzword, it's the Japanese equivalent of Japanese language equivalent of continuous improvement. And it's easy for any company to say, well, we believe in continuous improvement, but that belief is true but not useful unless it's actually translated into very specific procedures. So Kaizen is more than just a good intention. It's an overarching way of functioning in business way beyond just fixing specific issues. And so in this episode, we're really going to unpack the ingredients that convert Kaizen from a good intention into continual implementation in your businesses. And so where we'll go next is into three big challenges with Kaizen. Was there anything else you wanted to add first about what Kaizen is, Jason?
No, I think that, that sets the table, right? We've got the tablecloth down. Now let's put the utensils on and really dig into the meat of it, because I think it becomes more clear. If you understand that this is based on virtue, it's based on a personal sense of ownership, then the rest of Kaizen becomes clear as you walk through what the challenges are and how you are successful in utilizing and implementing it. So with that said, I'll kick it off with the first big challenge that we see, which is understanding that true nature of Kaizen. I'm kind of beating this drum hard, but this is something that's near and dear to my heart. It's not just change for the sake of change. It's not just frivolous problem solving. This is a commitment to improving the lives of people and improving the quality of the organization by making thoughtful and prudent change. And I think it's a really big thing because, especially in the heart of this word, by practicing Kaizen, you are striving to virtue. And, that's so much bigger than just making changes.
Mm-hmm. Really well said. And so to piggyback on that, what we're going to really zoom in on and deep dive into is what we call cultural Kaizen in contrast to what we call situational Kaizen. So situational Kaizen is what you were just talking about, Jason, where a problem shows up and somebody has this idea of, okay, let's turn this problem into an opportunity for improvement. That's situational Kaizen. But when the mindset and the skill set of Kaizen is fully embedded in a business, it becomes a cultural way of being in a business. And that's what we're calling cultural Kaizen in contrast to situational Kaizen.
Yeah. And I really like that because, it's two different perspectives, right? You're looking at your organization through the lens of either the culture, the people that make everything happen, and how their experience drives quality and productivity, or you're looking at it from the lens of a business, and that's, what is driving cash to the bottom line in a lot of cases, right? And so we're really looking at making that shift. And as you start to think about this in a more cultural and less operational sense, you start to realize some really big differences. If I think about, and I was hit face on with the difference in how the American work ethic and the American work paradigm is from really a cultural paradigm when I moved to the Netherlands. And I always had my business colleagues out there but saying, Jason, we are not animals, right? But as my formal indoctrination in US business, my mindset was always just plow through a problem, right? You may have to control symptoms. You may have to put a Band-Aid on, but really you just push through and you get to the other side because it's the other side that matters. And so, Doctor, talk to us a little bit more about when you take away that, especially the indoctrinated US work ethic, and you start thinking about the cultural ethic. Tell us how that changes things.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, and it does change things quite profoundly. When we're in reactivity mode, when we're in put out the fire after the fire is broken out mode, that's crisis mode. And yes, there are crises that emerge from time to time in a business, but both Jason and I have seen businesses that function in perpetual crisis mode where nothing gets addressed until after the fire has broken out. And management by crisis is not a sustainable management strategy. It's necessary on occasion, but it should not be the modus operandi. It should not be the way that the company operates in a day in, day out way. There's a saying in a number of indigenous cultures, including the First Nation, many of the First Nation people in the United States and in Canada, that has to do with decision making from the framework or the viewpoint of identifying the impacts of a decision on the next 7 generations that follow. And that approach, that mindset that is very proactive, has as its foundation looking toward being responsible to the next people, the next generations, the next iteration of the company, who will encounter the current challenge also over and over again in the future, unless we do something different to elevate our best practices today and into the future, so that the chances of a repetition of today's problem are not only kept to a minimum in the future, but if the problem recurs in the future anyway, that the problem will be recognized sooner and intervened with more effectively and rapidly than if we didn't take this proactive kind of approach to addressing current issues. So this proactive responsibility approach is the essence of the virtue aspect of Kaizen. And proactive responsibility changes the dynamic in a business culture from people being afraid to expose a problem that has arisen or that could arise until after it's exploded into a 3-alarm blaze, right? Or changing the dynamic from being blamed for a problem, the blaming if a solution that's proposed doesn't work, into an atmosphere of if I don't do what's virtuous and right, I'm letting down the team and I'm being negligent about the company's future.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. And there's such a dynamic of shared trust when you start to take responsibility for this. And, I've been racking my brain since we decided to talk about this to come up with a better anecdote to talk about this change of mindset than the one I'm going to use. And I just couldn't, so I'm going to go back to Toyota. And I think about, and I wish that I could have been there the day that Toyota was taking over the auto industry, right? And US automakers were starting to really struggle. And so they Ford and Chevrolet sent a cohort of engineers to go and observe the Toyota manufacturing line. And when they got there, they saw some things, they had their clipboards, they were taking notes, and they saw some things that they're like, oh yeah, that's nice. This is good. I can see how that's more efficient. And then about halfway through their tour, one of the line workers pulled the chain and stopped the entire production line, stopped it cold. And the team got together and talked about the problem that he saw and fixed it before the line started. This was revolutionary to, to these American engineers who started the automotive business, right? But could you imagine being one of those people that sees a frontline worker just stop all production and say, there's a problem, we need to fix it? I think that we're getting a little bit more comfortable with that in the US. We still haven't embraced it as a society and business, but we're getting a little bit more comfortable with it. But that's the change that we're talking about making. A frontline worker not only feeling empowered, but feeling responsible to stop all production so that a problem can be fixed before defective parts are sent out. And with that said, let's start to talk about how you can get there, right?
Before we do, I just want to add one PS to what you were saying, because what you're really describing is the essence of bottom-up change. So there's a lot of emphasis on top-down change for really good reasons, because there's a lot of change that has to come from the top down. Because if leaders aren't walking the talk, then the rest of the people in an organization aren't going to walk it either. But this is about the other half of the full equation of change. Top down is one half, bottom up is the other half. And I can't think of a better example of bottom up change than what you just described as well in terms of Kaizen. So it's a perfect example, Jason.
Yeah. And, I get excited every time I think about a organizational culture that has this trust, that has this empowerment, and that has this personal sense of pride and ownership in the outcome. Yes. So, that's what we're looking to help you all to achieve. And so let's talk about some of these solutions. And the first thing that I think is really important to talk about when we're thinking about how do we implement Kaizen into our organization is to recognize that there are actually 5 facets of a Kaizen culture. And most of the American companies that I have worked with and seen use one. And so the 5 facets are a growth in the sense of community and interconnected responsibility. They're called point, system, line, plane, and cube. But that's just an expansion of that responsibility, that network, and the organizational mindset. So Point Kaizen, to start us off, is the most basic. It's the one that I see American business owners, when they are using Kaizen, implementing. And that's when somebody sees a problem, they take the responsibility to address it and solve it. This is the employee on the line stopping production to say, if we keep the line running, there will be defective units going out. So that's Point Kaizen. And that's a really important one, right? It's the key to bottom up change. And it's also the heart and soul of personal ownership and empowerment to grow this whole Kaizen culture.
Yes. And Point Kaizen is a crucial building block in impact literacy, in helping people really become far more able to assess impacts of choices than most people are trained in the educational system to be able to do. And so Point Kaizen leads into facet number 2, which is system Kaizen. And system Kaizen is looking into a forward future time frame, thinking about 7 generations ahead. And I'm meaning that metaphorically, not literally 7 generations, but thinking about future impacts of current issues or of neglecting current issues. And so what System Kaizen is looking forward in time to spot future problems before they erupt proactively, and then based on an understanding of what problems could emerge, planning how to prevent them from emerging to the extent that prevention is possible, and installing a proactive superior solution to be utilized if those problems do emerge despite best efforts to prevent them from emerging in the first place. That's the essence of system Kaizen.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll see these first two facets are at the individual level, right? Essentially, the point Kaizen is learning how to play Kaizen checkers. System Kaizen is Kaizen chess. And then we go into facet 3, which is starting to expand beyond the individual. It's called line Kaizen, and it's changing how you communicate vertically and horizontally with the people you're in direct contact with, so that you get more people involved in the process. It's the idea of saying, hey, I see a problem, and you're an expert in something that is tangential to this problem. How should we go about this, resolving it together? And so once the individual is empowered, confident, has ownership, and is looking forward in the organization, then you go to line Kaizen and you start communicating those Kaizen thought processes and engaging more of your direct network, your immediate range of communication, to get them involved in the Kaizen game as well.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And to expand your metaphor of checkers and chess, if point Kaizen is individual checkers and system Kaizen is individual chess, line Kaizen is cultural or systemic checkers. And what plain Kaizen, facet 4 of Kaizen is system chess, where several lines are brought together into organizational families, which are clusters of stakeholders, all of whom bring a different perspective to shared challenges, all of whom provide a different lens for understanding those challenges, for a different lens in terms of articulating their high intentions and their deep concerns related to those challenges, so that a truly holistic, integrative, systemic approach to dealing with these kinds of challenges as an integrated family, clusters of stakeholders, gets to occur. And this is a really powerful sign when a business is really solid in plain Kaizen. They're really in an elevated state of cultural well-being, cultural collaboration, cultural efficiency and productivity, and cultural sustainable well-being.
Absolutely. And some of the outward indications of success in plain Kaizen, you'll see more cross unit or cross-disciplinary teams forming ad hoc. You'll see a lot more communication with the different departments, and you'll see a dissolution of the siloing that tends to occur as an organization grows. And so, you want to not only have an idea of what Kaizen looks like as it grows, but also what does the organization look like as you're successful with these things. And then, just rounding out to full geek mode, our analogy, facet 5 is called cube Kaizen, and that's going to be 3-dimensional chess. This is where the concept of Kaizen expands beyond the borders of the organization itself. This is where you see suppliers and consumers getting involved in the conversation, sharing their experiences and their struggles, so that the organization can really cross the border and provide benefit from the wheel, if you will. And it's the hardest to pull off, but it's the most impactful thing that you can have, because now there is a culture around your brand. There are loyal customers. You have transparency into the supply chain that the average business won't have. You have the ability to be proactive in an entire community. And especially as ESG becomes, one of those buzz acronyms that people are very concerned about, and people are thinking more about the triple bottom line, you can only achieve true stewardship as a business owner and as an organization if you have a community that goes beyond the borders of your organization.
Absolutely. And that's what I was thinking as well, that Cube Kaizen really is 3D chess. And those of you who are Star Trek fans, you've seen 3D chess actually played by certain Star Trek characters in certain episodes of the original series and the Next Generation. So as you're seeing, in having unpacked these 5 facets of culture Kaizen, you're hopefully recognizing now that Kaizen is a way of being. It's a way of life in a business. It's not simply do Kaizen in this situation and then forget about Kaizen until the next situation. No. It's an ongoing mindset. And Kaizen has a wonderful connection as a worldview and a mindset with another Japanese concept called Wabi-sabi. And Wabi-sabi is also a mindset and a worldview. And what Wabi-sabi is finding the gift, the gold, the virtue, the usefulness in an undesired situation that has arisen. The symbol of wabi-sabi in the Japanese culture is a piece of ceramic, often a bowl or a mug, where there's a crack in the ceramic and where the crack has been filled in with gold. And that is a perfect symbol of the wabi-sabi mindset. And when you're in a wabi-sabi mindset, you're not wigged out by undesired situations that come up. You're not wigged out by imperfections. You don't go into shaming and blaming and guilt and all of that nonsense. You instead go, okay, this was not what I had planned on. This is not what in my idealized version of how the business operates, this is not how I would have envisioned things unfolding. So yeah, it doesn't seem to be desired. And I'm not going to dwell on the undesiredness. I'm going to dwell on how to fill the crack in with gold, how to turn the undesired situation into a blessing that we might not wish on ourselves to have it recur in the future, but where we have harvested such value from the undesired that we're grateful for what has come from the undesired. And that's the wabi-sabi mindset. So when you combine the Kaizen mindset and strategies with a wabi-sabi worldview, you've got a formula for a really high collaboration, high happiness, high productivity company culture. And with all of that heavy seriousness, I'm going to look to you to lighten it up with your great joke.
You know, what's funny is I was just thinking, for anybody that's watched this podcast or listened to it on one of our servers, this is exactly the time where I would make some kind of corny joke about loving wasabi. But this is too serious for that, I think. This deserves actually a level of brevity that I'm not used to. but we're talking about a really important concept. And what comes to me more than the humor that I like to try to inject is this idea that when you have wabi-sabi, which is make the gold in the crack, and you have Kaizen, you realize that the difficulty, the challenge, the obstacle that you're facing is an opportunity to grow your own virtue. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. We have in the American language, we have a lot of really nice cliches about, if you're not hurting, you're not growing, and, all of those things, which they're all true. But the reality is every single challenge is an opportunity to bring out your character, whatever it is. The hardest instance you face will bring out the truest iteration of your character. And if you're building your character on a mindset of going through this struggle and finding a resolution that will benefit future generations, or you go into it with the mindset of, why is this happening to me, and how quickly can I get out of it? One of those mindsets truly does set you up for virtue. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And that's why, I've been a huge proponent and very, very passionate about Kaizen for many years. But I love that we have this opportunity in this podcast to explore why it's so important. And I think that's great.
Yeah. And I'm going to piggyback on that, because one of the things that I think is very important and very precious about Kaizen is that it goes beyond the old cliche of, if you're not hurting, you're not growing. So Kaizen does handle when people are hurting or when a situation arises that's undesired. But what Kaizen is at its height, at its pinnacle, is happy learning rather than miserable learning. It's about preventing what's preventable and about having an optimal response plan locked and loaded if something that is a foreseeable complication does arise, so that you don't have to be hurting in order to grow. The old cliche of mostly people change not because they see the light, but because they feel the heat. Yes, it's true. It's not simply true, it's incomplete. To settle for only growing when we're hurting leaves too much gold on the table that's unutilized. Becoming proactive is about becoming a happy learner, so you don't have to always be bludgeoned into surrender, where you are building things from a place of well-being and happiness that mitigate avoidable problems.
Yeah, I like that very much. And that kind of leads us into, my key takeaway from this, which is that, when an organization's Kaizen culture is fully matured and fully realized, this is a strategic approach to a strong community. It's easy to embrace and understand that continuous improvement is going to optimize efficiency and increase the quality of output. But I think for me, the big takeaway today is that it goes beyond that into full-fledged strategic community engagement for the betterment of the whole. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
Well said. So that's one of just two key takeaways that Jason and I have identified from this episode. The other is that when you and your business think about change as a virtue rather than as an acknowledgement of defects, your whole world and your business's whole world changes, because instead of fear of failure, these situations are viewed as opportunities to make things better, either proactively or when things go south despite best intentions. The focus is that we really want to challenge you to take away from this episode, is that focus in yourself and in installing this focus in your business about not worrying about failure, but instead focusing on opportunities for improvement, for continuous improvement, for preventive improvement, and for responsive improvement when prevention isn't sufficient.
Yeah. And when you're empowered to look forward, when you're empowered to not be afraid to expose a defect, then you can get in front of these things. And to bring it all the way back to your introduction, Dr. Gruder, you can turn your culture very quickly into one of driving forward to a better business versus one of always reacting to the next big issue.
Well said.
So with that said, this was a quick but dense episode. I hope it went enjoyably quickly for all of you listeners as well. On behalf of Dr. Gruder and myself, thank you so much for listening. It's always a treat to know that you're out there. It would be even more exciting to see you click the subscribe button and, most importantly, add some comments and feedback. We'd love to hear your experiences with Kaizen. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the episode. And if there's anything that you would like to hear us explore in greater detail, we'd be excited about that as well. So click subscribe, add comments, and come back for the next episode. We've got another interview coming up. It's going to be a very exciting one. So we will talk to you soon.
That's all for this episode of Boosting Business Value. May your new learning result in the smoothest and most profitable exit strategy for your business. With the right knowledge and guidance, the sky's the limit to what you can do. Do not miss an episode by subscribing to the show. And if you want to learn where your business currently stands, we also have free key opportunity assessments. Find all of them at blueskyadvisors.net/podcast. Thank you for joining us. See you on the next one.